Hey, what's up everyone? I hope you all are doing well. This is Jack from byprogrammers.com and welcome back to a brand new episode of Let's Code React Native. Before we begin, I just want to say sorry to keep you guys waiting, and the reason being is because we were celebrating Chinese New Year in the beginning of February, and right after we came back from our holiday, we had way too much work to pick up in the office. For that reason, we had no choice but to delay our project a little bit. Anyway, don't worry, we'll certainly try our very best to speed up our progress without compromising the code quality, of course. Thank you so much for your kind understanding. Alright, so in this episode, we are going to build a pretty cool e-commerce app based on a brand new UI design. As you can see here, this project has quite a number of screens, which includes the walkthrough, authentication, the dashboard, category, product, cart, invoice, store, and so on and so forth. Just like how we did it previously, we wouldn't be able to cover all the screens in the form of a video. But what we are going to do is that we are going to filter out a number of interesting screens and split into, I would say, a maximum of 3 different videos so that we all can learn together. Now, as a token of appreciation from us, if you were to get the source code of the first part of this project from shop.byprogrammers.com before we release the second part, you will be able to get the source code for the subsequent releases entirely for free without any additional charges. Alright, now with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so for the first part of this project, we are going to build the walkthrough screens. And just like the previous episode, instead of creating the project from scratch, we have actually prepared a star template so that it will be a lot easier for you guys to follow along. So navigate to the star template, the link is in the description below. Go ahead and download the source code and you should be able to get something like this. And as usual, the first thing we need to do is to open up your terminal and run npm install. Next, you will need to run npx react native link. After that, we will need to cd into iOS and run pod install. And lastly, we can then navigate back to the root directory and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, so as you can see here, this is a very simple and basic starter template where we have the assets folder over here. We have the text button component in the components folder. We have the constants folder, and lastly we have the screens folder over here. Alright, so after you have successfully built and run the app, you will be presented with a very simple, straightforward welcome screen that basically allows you to navigate to the walkthrough screen. Alright, now for the walkthrough screen, we will first focus on constructing the basic layout of our walkthrough screens, which basically allows the user to be able to scroll through each of these screens. And after we have laid out all the basic components, which includes the text component, the dots component over here, as well as the buttons underneath, we will then revisit how we can actually animate each of these images over here. Alright? So go back to your source code, open up the walkthrough.js file over here. Let me get rid of the text component. And over here, instead of text component, we need to import the animated component. Right? After this, we can then import from components, and for this we need text button. And since text button is actually a pretty straightforward component, which is why we have already included in the star template over here. Alright, next we need to import from constants, and for this we need colors, sizes, constants, and fonts, like that. Alright, next we need to add a bit of styling for our container view over here. Alright, so flex should be equals to 1 and the background color should be equals to colors.light. Alright, save it. Next, within this container view, we are going to render an animated.flatlist component. And the reason being is because the base structure of our walkthrough screen over here is actually a flat list component that allows the user to scroll horizontally, right? And the reason why we need to use animated.flatlist is so that we can get access to the onScroll prop, which later on allows us to sort of like animate the dots component over here. We'll see how we can achieve that later on, alright? So go back to your source code. Over here, the data is going to be constants.walkthrough, alright? Key extractor is going to be item followed by the arrow function item.id. Horizontal should be equals to true. Snap to interval should be equals to sizes.width. Deceleration rate should be equals to fast. Shows horizontal scroll indicator should be equals to false. Scroll event throttle should be equals to 16. And for the onScroll prop, over here it's going to be animated.event, like that. Native event, content offset, x, scroll x. And over here, the use native driver should be equals to false. So what we are doing here for this onScroll prop is that we are basically getting the x position, the x scroll position, and store it into the scroll x variable over here. And of course, we need to create the scroll x variable at the top over here. So constant scroll x equals to react.useRef, and for the initial value, it's going to be new animated.value 0. Over here, it's going to be current, like that. Next, for the render item prop. Alright, so render item equals to item index followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a container view with a bit of styling. Width should be equals to sizes.width, and justify content should be equals to center. Now just to see if it works, I'm going to simply render a text component for now, and over here we are going to render item.title. Right, save it. Oops, let me import text component over here. Save it. Get started. Alright, cool. So we have the title in place, and we should be able to scroll horizontally like this. Perfect. Alright, now for the render item prop, within the container view, we can basically divide it into two different sections. The first section over here is what we call the image section, and the second section is the title and description section over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. I'm going to remove the text component. And over here, we can actually split it into two different sections, like what we have just discussed, right? So here we have the walkthrough images, which we are going to animate it later on. And next, we have the title and descriptions section, right? So for the walkthrough images, I'm going to simply create a container view, and the flex should be equals to 1. All right. Next, for the title and description section, we need another container view with a bit of styling over here. All right. So for the height, it's going to be sizes.height multiplied by 0.5. Align item should be equals to center. Justify content should be equals to flex start, and the padding horizontal should be equals to sizes.padding. Alright, now within the container view, we need to render two text components, right? The first one is going to be the title, and followed by the description over here. Okay, so for the first text component, we are going to render title, item.title, sorry. And for the style, fonts should be equals to h1. Next, we are going to render another text component, and this time it's going to be item.subtitle. Same thing, we need to supply some styling as well. So margin top should be equals to sizes.radius. Text align should be equals to center. The font should be equals to body tree, like that. And the color is going to be colors.grade. Alright, save it. Perfect. So we have the empty space over here for the images later on, and we have our title and subtitle being rendered properly as well over here. Sweet. Alright, next we'll be working on the dots component over here. And in order to achieve that, we are going to render a new function right after the flat list. Over here, we are going to render a new function called render footer. And we are going to create this function over here, right? So function render footer, we are going to return a container view with a bit of styling over here. Alright, so position should be equals to absolute, bottom equals to 0, left equals to 0, right equals to 0, height is going to be sizes.height multiplied by 0.2, align item equals to center, justify content equals to space between, padding horizontal is going to be sizes.padding, and for the padding vertical, if the sizes.height is more than 700, then it's going to be sizes.padding, or else it will be 20, like that. Alright, now within the container view over here, we can then render the dots component. And for the dots component, we will simply make use of the function expression over here, right? So constant dots equals to an arrow function, and we are going to return something. Alright, so over here, the first thing we need to return is actually a container view, like that, with a bit of styling. Oops. Flex direction equals to row, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center as well. And since we need to sort of animate the dots component over here, we need to first calculate the dot position, right? So constant dot position equals to any method dot divide scroll x sizes dot width, like that. Now over here within the container view, we are going to make use of the map method to sort of render the dots, right? So constants dot walkthrough dot map, over here we have item index followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return an animated dot view where the key is going to be dot dash index, style will be border radius 5, margin horizontal is going to be 6, width will be 10, height will be 10, and for the background color, I'm going to simply hard code it to, let's say, blue for now. Alright, save it. Okay, cool, so we have the dots in place. All we need to do now is to animate the dot component. So in order to achieve that, we can make use of the interpolate method. So over here, constant dot color equals to dot position dot interpolate. Here we have the input range, index -1, index plus 1, and for the output range, we have colors dot dark 08, colors dot primary, and colors dot dark 08 as well. And for the extrapolate, it's going to be claim. Now we can then replace the blue color with dot color, like that. Alright, save it. Now whenever we scroll through the flat list, the dot component over here should animate accordingly as well, just like that. Sweet. Alright, now that we have successfully rendered the dots component, next we'll be working on the two text buttons over here. Alright, so go back to your source code over here. Right after the dots component, we are going to render a container view like that. Give it a bit of styling. I'm going to call this buttons, right? Now over here, the flex direction should be equals to row, and the height should be equals to 55. Alright, now within the container view, we are going to render two text buttons. Okay, text button like that. So for this, the label is going to be join now, content container style, flex should be equals to 1, border radius will be sizes.radius, background color equals to colors.light gray. Alright, and for the label style, color is going to be primary, and the font will be H3. Next, I'm going to simply copy this, paste it over here, and I'm going to change the label to logged in. And over here, I'm going to give it a bit of margin left, sizes.radius. And lastly, I'm going to get rid of this color over here. Alright, now save it. Oops, the background color should be equals to primary. Alright, perfect. Okay. Now that we have already set up the structure of our walkthrough screen, next we are going to work on the slider over here. Now in order to achieve this, we will be making use of two flat lists to render a list of different images horizontally. Now what makes this screen an interesting one to work on is that instead of letting the user to scroll manually, we will implement it in such a way that it can scroll automatically, right? Now let's see how we can do that. So go back to your source code. Over here, the next thing we need to do is to create a new file called walkthrough1, which stands for the first walkthrough screen. So walkthrough1.js. Over here, same thing, we need to import from React. We need to import from React Native. And for this, we need view and image. Next, I'll need to import flatlist from React Native gesture handler. Now the reason why I'm importing flatlist component from React Native gesture handler instead of React Native is so that we wouldn't be getting the virtualized list warning later on when we work on the slider. Alright, so after this, we can then import from constants, and for this we need a sizes and constants. After this, we need to define a constant variable of item width of 120, which basically means each of these images over here in the slider has a width of 120. Alright, so next we can then define the functional component. So constant walkthrough1 equals to arrow function, and we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default walkthrough1 like that. Next, before we start to render the slider, we need to define a couple of states over here. Alright, so we have constant row1 images, set row1 images equals to react.useState, and this is going to be an array. And over here, I'll include constants.walkthrough0101 images. And what I'm going to do over here is that I'm going to append the same set of array over here as well, like that. Now the reason why I am duplicating the array before we assign it to the row1 images state is so that we can have a smooth automatic scrolling slider over here even if it reaches the end. Alright, next we need to define another state called current position. Set current position, and we need this current position state to basically implement the automatic scrolling feature. Alright, so set current position equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be 0. Alright, so this is for row 1. Next we have row 2, right? So same thing, we have constant row 2 images, set row 2 images equals to react.useState, and this one's going to be an array as well, and I'm going to do the same thing. So constants dot walkthrough 0102 images, and I am going to duplicate it as well. Again, this is so that we can have a smooth automatic scrolling slider. Alright, next we need to keep track of the row 2 current position as well. This is basically for us to implement the automatic scrolling feature. Alright, so set row 2 current position equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be 0 as well. Alright, so after the states, we need to define two more reference variables for our flat list. Okay, so constant row1 flat list ref equals to react.useRef, and constant row 2 flat list ref equals to react.useRef as well. Alright, next for the render section over here, I am going to first render a container view, and within this container view we are going to render two different sliders, or I should say two different flat lists, right? So over here we have slider 1 and followed by slider 2. Now over here we are going to render a flat list like that. Ref is going to be row 1 flat list ref. Deceleration rate equals to fast. It has to be horizontal. The shows horizontal scroll indicator should be equals to false. The list key is going to be slider 1. Key extractor is going to be, I don't need the item, I need the index, followed by the arrow function, and here it's going to be slider 1 underscore index, right? Next, for the data, it's going to be row 1 images, and lastly over here we will need to supply the render item prop. So render item equals to item index followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a container view with a bit of styling, right? Width is going to be the item width that we have defined earlier. Align items equals to center. Justify content equals to center as well. Now within the container view, we are going to render the image component, right? So for the image component, the source is going to be item, and for the style, width is going to be 110 and the height is going to be 110 as well. Alright, now save it. The reason why the flat list is not showing over here is because we need to render walkthrough 1 and the walkthrough.js screen over here, right? So in the walkthrough images section over here, I'm going to check if the index equals to 0, then I'm going to render walkthrough 1. And I think I need to import walkthrough 1 over here as well. Alright, it has already been imported for me automatically. That's great. Alright, save it. Let me give the container view a bit of styling over here. The justify content should be equals to center. Right, save it. Perfect. Now as you can see over here, we can scroll through the slider. Next, I'm going to render the second slider over here. So go back to your walkthrough1.js file. Over here, we need to render another flat list, right? Where the ref equals to row 2 flat list ref. Deceleration rate equals to fast. For the style, margin top should be equals to sizes.padding. It should be horizontal. The shows horizontal scroll indicator should be equals to false. The list key is going to be slider 2. Key extractor, same thing. We don't need item, we need index followed by the arrow function, and over here it's going to be slider 2 underscore index. For the data, it's going to be row 2 images. And lastly, for the render item prop, it should be the same as what we did in slider 1. So for that reason, I'm going to simply copy like that and paste it over here. Alright, save it. Perfect. So we have successfully rendered 2 flat lists or 2 sliders over here. The next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to set the scroll enable to false. I do not want the user to, to be able to scroll through the list, right? So scroll enable equals to false. Same goes for the first slider over here. Alright, save it. Now in order to make sure we can scroll through the flat list automatically, we need to make use of the use effect hook over here. So react.useEffect. Over here it's going to be arrow function like that. Now in order to achieve the automatic scrolling effect or the scrolling feature, we will make use of the set timeout method. So before we can do that, we need to first declare a variable. So over here, let position timer. This is so that we can do the cleanup later on, alright? Like that. And over here, we'll make use of the constant function. So constant timer equals to arrow function. And we are going to trigger this constant function over here. And don't forget, we need to, sort of do the cleanup over here at the end of the use effect hook, right? So return arrow function clear timeout equals to position timer. Alright, now within the constant function over here, we are going to make use of the set timeout method, like that, followed by the arrow function, and we are going to trigger this set timeout method in 32 milliseconds like this. And of course, we need to assign the set timeout to position timer. This is so that we can do the cleanup over here, right? Now within the set timeout method over here, in order to achieve the auto scrolling effect, we need to basically, increment the position or the scroll position with each new interval. This is basically how we are going to create the auto scrolling effect over here later on. Alright, so I'm going to divide this into two different sections. The first one is for slider 1, and the second section is for slider 2. So over here, I'll make use of the set current position state, like this. I'll get access to the previous position, followed by the arrow function. And over here, the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to get the new position. And to do that, I'm going to define a new variable called position equals to previous position plus 1. Alright, so basically this is the new position of slider 1. Next, I'm going to have the row 1 to scroll to new position. So to do that, it's very easy. We can get access to the row 1 flat list ref dot current dot scroll to offset, and over here the offset will be the new position, like that, and animated should be equals to false. Now up to this point, we should have the auto scrolling effect or auto scrolling feature, but that's not enough because we would like to have our slider to be able to scroll endlessly, right? So in order to achieve that, we need to calculate the max offset. So constant max offset equals to constant dot walk through 0101 images dot length multiplied by item width. With this simple calculation, we will be able to get the maximum offset, which means the furthest we can scroll to in this flat list. And over here, I'm going to check if the previous position is more than maximum offset, which means our slider has already scrolled beyond the maximum offset. Then I'm going to calculate the offset, which is equals to previous position minus maximum offset. And I'm going to have my slider, which is row 1 flat list ref dot current dot scroll to offset, to basically scroll to offset. Animated should be equals to false. Right, so what we are doing here is basically to have the infinite scrolling effect. Okay, so over here I'm going to simply return offset, or else I'm going to return the position, like that. Alright, now let me try to save it and see what we have. Oops, I almost forgot. At the end of this set timeout method, I need to re-trigger the timer constant function. This is so that we can implement the automatic scrolling feature. Alright, so save it. Perfect, so as you can see here, our slider 1 has the automatic scrolling feature. Next, I'm going to do the same for slider 2. So come over here, same thing. I'm going to make use of the set roll to current position state. Over here, I'll get access to the previous position, followed by the arrow function. And same thing, we need to calculate the new position. So constant position equals to previous position plus 1. And once we got the new position, we would like to have our slider 2 to scroll to that particular position. So row 2 flat list ref dot current dot scroll to offset. Over here for the offset, it's going to be position, and the animated should be equals to false. Same thing, in order to achieve the infinite scrolling effect, we need to calculate the maximum offset. So constant max offset equals to constants dot walk through 0102 images dot length multiplied by item width. Once we got the maximum offset, we can then check if the previous position is more than maximum offset. If it's more than maximum offset, which means we have scrolled beyond the maximum offset over here, we can then calculate the offset equals to previous position minus maximum offset. And I'm going to have the slider 2, which is row 2 flat list ref dot current dot scroll to offset to scroll to offset, and the animated should be equals to false. Alright, same thing. I'm going to return offset over here, and if it's not, then I'm going to simply return position. Alright, save it. Perfect. So we have successfully implemented the automatic scrolling effect for both the sliders, right? So what I'm going to do next is that I would like to have the second slider, which is slider 2 over here, to have the scrolling effect from left to right instead of right to left. In order to achieve that, we need to go back to the flat list component over here. I would like to do a bit of I would say it's like kind of like a hack over here. So I'm going to make use of the transform property. Alright, and what I'm going to do next is that I would like to rotate the entire flat list by 180 degree. Alright, save it. Okay, so as you can see here, the scrolling effect starts from left to right for slider 2. Now all we need to do is to have the transform property being defined over here as well, to simply rotate the images by 180 degree as well, like that. Save it, and perfect. Alright, so we have completed the automatic scrolling effect for the first walkthrough screen. Next, we'll be working on the images for the second walkthrough screen over here. Now this is pretty interesting as well. What happened here is that all these images, they will first be rendered in the center, and once we navigate to the second walkthrough screen, which is this screen over here, all those images will be animated to the respective position like this. Alright, let's see how we can do that. It's pretty cool actually. Let's see how we can do that. So the first thing we need to do, as usual, we need to create a new walkthrough file, right? So we have walkthrough 2.js. This is for the second walkthrough screen, right? Alright, now I'm gonna scroll to the second walkthrough screen, which is this one over here. Over here, I need to import from React. I need to import from React Native, and for this, we need view, image, and style sheet. Next, we need to import from constants, and for this, we need sizes and images. Right, after this we can then define the functional component. So constant walkthrough 2 equals to arrow function followed by the return statement, and we are going to return something, right? Don't forget we need to export default walkthrough 2. Now just to test if it works, I'm going to simply render a view with a text component in the middle like this. Test. Alright, save it. Now go back to the walkthrough.js file. Over here, if the index equals to 1, then I'm going to render walkthrough 2. Alright, save it. Perfect, it's working. Now before we start to work on the animation for the second walkthrough screen, there are a bit of configurations that we need to do over here in the walkthrough.js file. And the reason being is because I only want the animation, which is the animation to move the images to its respective position. I only want the animation to be triggered after the user has scrolled to the second screen over here. Alright, so in order to achieve that, we need to define a state over here. Right, so we need a state for walkthrough 2. Walkthrough 2 over here, constant walkthrough to animate, set walkthrough to animate equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be false. Next, in order to understand which screen the user has scrolled to, we need to make use of the onViewable items change prop. So scroll down to the flat list component over here. We need to make use of the onViewable items change prop, and we are going to assign it to a reference variable which we are going to create shortly. Alright, it's going to be called as onViewChangeRef dot current like that, and we are going to create this ref over here. Alright, so constant on view change ref equals to react.useRef. Over here it's going to be viewable items change followed by the arrow function. And now I would like to check if the viewable item, the first item of the array, dot index is equals to 1, which means if it's the second walkthrough screen, then I'm going to set the walkthrough to animate to true, right? Which means I would like the second walkthrough screen to trigger the animation. Okay. Next, what I would like to do is that I would like to simply pass the walkthrough to animate state over to walkthrough2.js. Alright, so over here, for the walkthrough2.js, I'm going to pass the animate state over as a prop, right? So animate equals to walkthrough to animate, like that. Alright, save it. Scroll to the second walkthrough screen. Now over here in the walkthrough2.js, we need the animate prop over here, like that. Okay, now that our animate prop is in place, next we can then work on the animations over here. And in order to achieve animations like this, we are going to make use of an awesome library called Mothy. To make things easier, I have already set up this library in the star template. If not, you can simply follow the installation steps over here. Okay, so go back to your source code. Over here, we need to import from Mothy, right? So for this, we need use dynamic animation and Mothy image. Next, we need to define the style sheet over here because we need it to style the images later on. All right. So constant styles equals to style sheet dot create image. Position is going to be absolute. Width will be at the 6. Height it's going to be 112. Z index is going to be 0, and border radius is going to be sizes.radius. Okay, next I'm going to define the initial positions of these multi images, or the images that we are going to animate later on. Okay, so go back to your source code. Over here we are going to define the Mothy initial position, right? So for this walkthrough2 screen, we have 5 images that we are going to animate later on. Okay, so constant Mothy image1 equals to use dynamic animation followed by the arrow function, and over here it's going to be top 30%, left 25%. Right now I'm going to simply copy and paste it like this. For Mothy image 2, the top is going to be 45, left is going to be 15. Same thing. For Mothy image 3, the top is going to be 58 and the left is going to be 25. For Mothy image 4, the top is going to be 61 and the left is going to be 40. And lastly, for Mothy image 5, the top is going to be 27 and the left is going to be 50%. Alright, once we have set up the Mothy image initial position, next we can then get rid of the text component over here, give the container view a bit of styling. So flex equals to 1 and overflow is going to be hidden. Now over here we are going to first define 2 images, which is basically these 2 images, as static images, which means we are not going to animate these 2 images later on. Alright, so over here I'm going to simply render image component where the source is going to be images.walkthrough 0201, like that. Alright, so for the style, I'm going to include styles.image like this, and I'm going to override some of the properties. Top is going to be 35%, left is going to be 35% as well. Width is going to be 106, height is going to be 161, and lastly the Z index is going to be 1, like that. Save it. Alright, so we have the first static image in place. Next, we need to render another static image. So we need to render an image component over here, where the source is going to be images dot walkthrough 0202, like that. Alright, and for the style, I'll include the image style over here as well, like that. And I would like to override the top to 50% and left to 50% as well. Alright, save it. Okay, perfect. So we have the static images in place. Next, we will start to work on the multi-images, which is the image that we are going to animate later on. Alright, so over here, we need to render a multi-image. The state, which is the initial state, is going to be multi-image 1. The source is going to be images.walkthrough 0203. And for the style, it's going to be styles.image. Alright, let me save it first and see what we got. Okay, it's over here. I'm going to simply copy, paste it over here like this. I'm going to change this to multi-image 2, this one to 0204. Same thing, I'm going to duplicate, change this to 3, change this to 5. Again, change this to 4, change this to 6. And lastly, change this to 5 and change this to 7. Alright, save it. Okay, perfect. We have all the multi-images in place. Now all we need to do is to animate the multi-images to its respective position if and only if the animate prop over here equals to true. Alright, so in order to achieve that, we need to make use of the use effect hook. So react.useEffect followed by the arrow function, and over here we are going to listen to the animate prop. Alright, so if the animate equals to true, then I would like to animate the multi-image 1, animate 2, top 20%, left 15%. Alright, now let me try to save it and see if it works. See, as you can see here, the image starts to animate. Let me reload the app so you have a better view. Alright, so get started. Now, once I scroll to the second screen, which is the walkthrough 2 screen, the multi-image 1 will start to animate. Alright, let's see. Perfect. Now, all I need to do is to copy this and paste it for the other multi-images as well. So multi-image 2, animate to 38%. Left is going to be -10. Same thing, multi-image 3, top equals to 62%. Left equals to 5%. Multi-image 4, top equals to 75%, left equals to 40%. And lastly, for multi-image 5, top equals to 15% and left equals to 65%. Okay, save it, and there you have it. Now let me try to reload the app and see if it's working properly. Okay, get started. Now once I navigate to the second screen, all the multi-images should animate, right? Perfect. Now by using the same approach that we did here in the walkthrough 2 screen, you should be able to implement for the walkthrough 3 and walkthrough 4 screens, because the concepts are actually the same. And once you have done that, you should be able to get something like this. Once I scroll through the walkthrough screen, all the multi-images should animate accordingly, just like this. Alright guys, and there you have it. We have finally completed the first part of this cool e-commerce app based on a brand new UI design. The full source code for this project is available on shop.byprogrammers.com, and I have included the link in the description below. Now, as a token of appreciation from us, if you were to get the source code from shop.byprogrammers.com before we release the second part of this project, you will be able to get the source code for the subsequent parts or subsequent releases entirely for free without any additional charges. So thanks for watching guys. If you liked the video, we'll be more than happy if you can give it a thumbs up, comment, share to your friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. I will see you guys in the next video. Happy coding. Peace.